Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Um, so this is the tone paper assignment. So you're gonna get whatever paper you get, as long as it's a middle value. I don't care if it's a tan or gray. You're just aiming for something that's about a middle value. It's the paper that's behind the white paper here. I'm using tan. I usually find tan works better if you're really into doing portraits. It kind of naturally goes well with skin tones. I like gray too. So the first thing you're going to do, and I'm not giving exact dimensions for this because all the large sheets of paper are a little bit different. Um, like some of them are 18 by 24, some of them are larger than 18 by 24. So imagine this is your 18 by 24 or your large sheet. Um, we're going to make 16 boxes, um, almost like a comic strip. So the first thing you have to do is find the center, and then so you have to measure whatever your paper is. If your paper is 22 inches wide, then the middle's gonna be the 11 inch. So you have to do the math yourself, and then find the center again and just create a bullseye. And then you do it again with the ruler. Then you find the center between here and here. I'm not gonna do this with the ruler because I'm just gonna quickly speed through this. Find the center there. Do the same thing here. Find the center, and then find the center between here and here. Same thing, find the center between here and here. And do this with the ruler. I'm just rushing through this. So then you'll have 16 boxes. And you can feel free to cut them out. Sometimes students cut them out and they tape them in using like double-sided tape or glue into their sketchbook. I don't really care. As long as you can present it to me whatever easily. So we're gonna do 16 little drawings on the tone paper. This is just like a substitute for the tone paper right now. You might ask yourself, well, what are we drawing? That's where the clay comes into play. It's supposed to be hardening clay, and the lighter the color, the better. This one I think is maybe even a little too dark. Like if you can get white or like a really light gray or even a light pastel color, the lighter the better, because then the shadows will show up better on the lighter ones. Sometimes students come in with like a black one that will not work. It has to be light. Like even this one, I don't want you to think this is the value that I want you to use, because it's this one I think is already a little too dark. But I'm just trying to show you what I want you to do. And let me give you a couple warnings about the non-hardening clay. So you don't want to get any clay. So like Play-Doh won't work because that'll air dry on you. Students, there's always one or two students that comes to class and he has an air dry clay, and that won't work. So this has an oil in it that doesn't dry, so it'll always stay malleable. And the quick warning I want to give you is when you're working on it, don't place it on your paper, because then it'll leave a big ugly grease spot on your paper. So you're probably asking, so what are we doing with this? So the first thing I want you to, you're going to basically just play around with this, making different things. And I'm going to upload a new video where I talk about model building as a source reference. So the first square, the only requirement I really have, or I have a couple of requirements. The first square, just draw. You got to put this on your table and put a nice light on it. And you're going to just simply draw the little block. And, do all the shadows. And you're going to be using your white pastel. So you're going to actually be seeing like that. I'm doing this on the white paper just to show you really quickly, and then you move on, and then you play. You can make something with this. You can make literally anything. It could be abstract. It can be a little cartoon character. You can literally make anything, and you can light it. You have to get good lighting on it. It's actually, the shadows show up really nice on this. You can hold it up to a bright light, take a photo of it with your camera phone, or you can draw it from life. I don't really care which one you do. You just want to get a bright single light source on it so you can see the clear shadows. And what I don't want you to do is, this is what students always do, they make a little something, they put it in the middle, make a little something, they put it in the middle, make a little something, put it in the middle. Do not do this. Like, you want to eliminate the boring, empty space as much as possible. Like, you could easily, let's say I was drawing this guy here. I want you to zoom in, or maybe just find ways to create interesting compositions. Like, I can zoom into the shape right here, and then I only have just this little bit of empty space right here. Or you can rip this up into 10 little pieces, and then you can put it on your tabletop and be like, I have one shape here, one shape over there, one shape over there. Use your camera to get an interesting angle on it. The whole goal is for you to just experiment and come up with interesting compositions. And I'm going to make a requirement that you have to do several of them that are extreme close-ups. So again, resist the temptation to just make a little shape. You're going to make a little star, maybe you make a little car, make a little something, and just bullseye, 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 bullseye. Don't do that as much as you can. Try to come up with interesting you could have something going off the edge of the page over here, another something going off the edge of the page over here, and then maybe put something that's behind it here. So like you just have this little bit of empty space. Like interesting compositions, or like if you think of it like this is your tabletop. Maybe you make a cone and it's really close to your camera over here, and you make a ball and it's really far away over there, and you make like a, I don't know, another shape. You put it in the middle ground here. The goal is to just experiment, and then maybe even get like different angles when you photograph it. Maybe an angle from the top, from the side, extreme close up. The whole goal is for you to experiment as you progress. And my advice too is to don't spend too much time when you're playing around with your clay trying to make a little masterpiece. There's always one student who will spend like an hour perfecting a little sculpture. Don't really waste your time with that. Just play around with this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, this isn't a sculpture class, so I'm not really going to teach you how to make, little sculpture masterpieces. It's really about the drawing being decent. So I wanted to just do a little bit of demo with the tone paper. So imagine you have a light source coming from this direction. So plane that's towards the light gets the most white, and then as you move away, you fade out. And I'm letting the paper show through. That's how I'm able to make it look like it's transitioning. You can even smudge this a little bit, and depending on how dark it is, you might have a little bit of shadow down on this side. What you don't want to do, so like the more gradual steps you get, the better. What you don't want to do, a lot of students do this. They'll put a little shit. Well, first they do a lot of gaps in between. They'll put some chalk, and then they'll just abruptly stop. And an abrupt stop only works if you have an abrupt shift in plane. So for instance, on this guy, an abrupt stop works like that because there's an abrupt shift in the plane. And then maybe the middle one is just the tone paper, and this one is just a little darker. So you have to keep in mind, the reason why I mention this, because I notice a lot of you on your eggs, if I can quickly, I would see something like this, even though you guys weren't using white chalk, but I would see a lot of this where you would have an abrupt shift in tone, which that doesn't really work. Like, especially on an evenly curving surface. Like if you just abruptly stop like that, that looks like there's just a dent in this thing. Like it looks to me like this is like this goes in, there's a dent, like someone poked it or something. So it should be a gradual, like if the form is gradually turning like it is, you see on the edge here, then the shading should be gradually turning. If it's an abrupt turn, it'll look like that. So let me do some more stuff. So let's say, for instance, you draw, or you sculpt yourself a little snake shape, and say the light's coming from the bottom. You don't want to be relying a lot on outline, so maybe, since this edge is getting hit by a bright light, you get rid of that pencil line and use your white chalk. Have it fade out. Maybe the line is more appropriate on the other side because it's eventually going to have a cast shadow that's along this edge over here. So you want the outlines to disappear more. I'm seeing a lot of as I was grading, I was seeing a lot of like reliance on outline. So here's something. Can I show you another thing I noticed with the egg? Again, a lot of you relying on outline to do everything. You kind of want the outline to dissolve. I mean, I hope you guys can see that. I deliberately try to make the outline dissolve here with this shape. So a lot of students were doing this. They would shade in the background. I saw at least like 3 of you do this. And then, you'd put a little bit of shading on the egg on this side. And then you would just leave like this halo around the egg. It's like, objects don't have halos on them unless they're glowing. Like if the background is gray or in shadow, then it should come up to the edge of the egg. Avoid that haloing. I saw like so many of you doing the halo thing. It was kind of frustrating. So again, 16 squares on your tone paper. The first one's to keep it simple and experiment with shapes. You can literally do anything you want. You can make little snakes and then spell out your name. You can make funny little characters. You can make just abstract blobs. Doesn't matter. The goal is to have just an interesting shape with interesting form and shadows. So make sure you light it well. Take some photos of it. I think it's a good idea to not try to. I saw a student do this one time. They made like 16 sculptures and they photographed them and then they sat down and drew them. I think it's best to just do one, photograph it, or look at it from life, draw it, and then see what you've learned from that experience. Maybe as you're making the drawing, you realize, I don't really like these types of shapes. I want to try something completely different. And then the next one, try something, and then see what you learned from that one, and then the next one, try something different. You kind of want to like change what you're doing for each one. You don't want to do the same thing for all 16. Like another thing students always do, and I don't want you to do this too, is they want to do some kind of like stop animation thing. They want to do like one square, like it's a walking person, and then the next square the foot is coming up and then the foot's going down. I don't want any of that because that's too much the same. And each one has to be a dramatic shift of experimenting, of completely different types of form, completely different types of perspective. So like, and again, if you start doing the bullseye composition, you should put the brakes on that and stop. I'll maybe only allow maybe 1 or 2 bullseye compositions. I really say, how about aim for 0? If I tell you to aim for 0, you'll probably do 3 or 4 anyway. And I'll write more specific things that are required. And